Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following.
As Canadians honored our veterans at local Remembrance Day ceremonies, a new cenotaph was unveiled in the village of Sterling. A new report revealed just how many thousands of surgeries have been cancelled in Alberta due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we hear from a former chaplain of the Saskatchewan Roughriders who discusses the major impact Athletes in Action is having on young people.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Government and military officials turned out alongside thousands of Canadians to mark Remembrance Day this year in Ottawa. Some veterans also thought of and thanked family members who served.
It's a time to reflect and think about family members who've served, think about all of those who went before us, think about those who I'd served with who were killed in various places in the world. You know, I think about one great-great-uncle killed at the Second Battle of Arras on August 26, 1918. I think about another uncle with no known grave whose name is on the Vimy Memorial. I think about another great uncle killed in the Second World War in April of 1943, whose name is on the Runnymede Memorial for the missing Commonwealth air crew. You know, I think about those who I'd served with in Croatia in the lead up to the Medak Pocket that were killed. I think about those 158 who were killed in Afghanistan, many of whom I'd served with or knew their families or were involved in some part.
Many veterans and public officials also gathered at a special ceremony in Vancouver remembering Korean War veterans. International Development Minister Harjit Sajjan attended the special ceremony and discussed how important it is to honor veterans who fought in so many different wars.
First of all, it's a day of reflection for me and all Canadians. When Remembrance Day, I mean, before I was even serving, I used to go visit, go to Remembrance Day services. I've been taking my children ever since they were born as well. It's a reflection to say thank you to all the members that made the ultimate sacrifice and all the various campaigns for us to give us this beautiful life that we live in this country. And when we look at the campaigns, whether it's World War I, World War II, the campaigns, whether it's Afghanistan most recently, but let's not forget also in the Korean conflict as well. I'm working with the Senator very closely to commemorate the service that the Canadian Armed Forces did there. There's actually a hockey game that's played yearly in Canada that we were able to play in actually Korea, that we were able to dedicate as a way of remembering all those who gave their lives in the Korean campaign as well.
The village of Sterling here in southern Alberta unveiled a new cenotaph during their Remembrance Day ceremony yesterday. As Micah Quinn explains, the names on the stonework honor village members who have served in past wars.
Hundreds gathered in the village of Sterling to pay tribute to veterans who have sacrificed their lives for the freedoms we enjoy today. The mayor of Sterling, Trevor Lewington, says the total cost to build the cenotaph came in just under $60,000. If you look at the cenotaph, you will see the names of veterans from Sterling.
There's multiple generations here in town. Many people recognize the names of their grandparents or great-grandparents. It's been actually great to sort of just walk through the crowd here and hear people talking about different relatives, and many people have brought pictures today. So it's impactful because I think people actually have a direct connection with a lot of the names on the cenotaph. That's not always the case in a bigger center.
Glenn Miller, a member of the Alberta branch of the Last Post Fund, says many small communities like Sterling do not have the opportunity to be able to go to Remembrance Day ceremonies unless they head to a bigger city or town. And this new cenotaph rectifies that issue for the village.
This affords them the ability to bring their community even closer together, share those stories of service and sacrifice. Here you can see from very demonstration of people's attendance what would have been like last year and what's it going to be like next year, and how it can move forward with the youth.
The Alberta MLA for Tabor-Warner, Grant Hunter, took in the ceremony as well and laid a wreath. He says it's vital to honor the veterans who have served.
You know, we're probably 4 generations removed from calamity or from war. There are people who have gone to war in different parts, but we've never really seen it since Second World War. And it's nice to be able to have so many people here today to be able to thank them in their own way for the sacrifices that they've made.
Lewington says in past years, either the church or the school in the village have been in charge of conducting Remembrance Day ceremonies. But now that there's a permanent cenotaph, he hopes this site can serve as a gathering space for the community for future ceremonies. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
The Canadian Armed Forces arrived in Iqaluit on October 23rd to help install clean drinking water after the city's water was found to be contaminated with fuel. As of Tuesday, the military system is now up and running.
Since the RFA was sent out, we've had approximately 24 individuals from provincial Canada deployed to the north to assist in the residents of Iqaluit getting potable water. I'm happy to announce yesterday was the first day we delivered water to the city. Yesterday was 22,000 liters we produced for the city to give to the residents. We are drawing from the Sylvia Canal River. What we're doing is taking that raw water, putting it through our filtration system, which is a mechanical system. There's no chemicals included in this process. That's very important to understand. And we're producing pure drinking water for individuals. We are producing the water, we're giving it to the city, and the city is distributing it to the citizens.
Newly appointed Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly met with U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken today. She said the two discussed ways Canada and the United States will need to cooperate to speed up North America's economic recovery.
We worked on many issues together, but first and foremost, I wanted to be here because this is my first trip outside of Canada since COVID, but also as Foreign Affairs Minister. And I wanted to make sure that this was a priority because we have a strong friendship with the U.S. And we worked on many issues, clearly defending and protecting Canadian jobs and American jobs. We also mentioned the importance of strengthening our partnership when it comes to protecting democracies around the world, and as well as making sure that we can fight climate change together.
The Alberta government announced another major investment into modernizing irrigation infrastructure to help increase water storage here in southern Alberta. Agriculture Minister Nate Horner says the new $177.7 million worth of funding brings the total to nearly $933 million for 10 irrigation districts. The Alberta government is partnering with the Canada Infrastructure Bank to provide the financial boost to help our farmers.
By modernizing and building new irrigation infrastructure, we will increase irrigated acreage, increase primary crop production, and improve water use efficiency. This will also increase water storage capacity, enhance water security, provide flood protection, and support long-term value-added processing activity. It will also play a key role in Alberta's recovery plan, creating thousands of jobs and increasing agricultural GDP contributions by millions.
A new report says at least 45,000 surgical procedures have been postponed in Alberta throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the province, around 15,000 surgeries have been cancelled so far during the fourth wave. Patients are now waiting for up to 4 years from the time they're referred to when they're able to see a surgeon. Many Albertans are deciding to head south of the border to get their surgery, including Calgarian Tim Gibson. Tim paid just under $30,000 for hip replacement surgery in Montana. He said the wait time was only about a month and would do it again in a heartbeat. A woman whose surgery in our province for rare cancer in her face was delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic says the outcome of the wait has been quite extensive. Sharon Durham of Wynyard, Saskatchewan says she would not have lost her entire nose had the surgery been done sooner. She'll now have to wear a prosthetic nose.
They got the borders clear of cancer. That means around the tumor, all the borders around it, usually I think they go about a half centimeter past the tumor, were all cleared of cancer. So he was quite pleased with the outcome. Because of the pandemic and delays, this cancer of mine, which is aggressive, spread deeper than it probably would have if I could have got the second surgery needed, well, fifth actually, fourth. If I could have had it done back in, say, April, instead of waiting till October, I would definitely have a nose to reconstruct instead of having to go and get a full prosthetic nose put on.
A pro-life political party in our province has been busy collecting donations. The Pro-Life Alberta Political Association says it raised around $216,000 so far this year. The amount places it third in fundraising behind the NDP and the United Conservatives. Party officials say the money coming in shows that right-to-life issues are being neglected, and their ultimate goal is to have the government cut funding for abortions. The Pro-Life Alberta Political Association used to be called the Alberta Social Credit Party before the name was changed in 2017. The 29th annual Angel Tree Christmas campaign launched earlier today in Lethbridge. The operation is a project of Lethbridge Family Services and provides gift bundles for children in need. The Angel Tree's campaign manager, Trina Timko, says the need this year will be even higher due to the pandemic, and there will also be shipping delays from overseas.
When this room is filled to capacity, and it looks full right now, but it's not. Believe it or not, it's not full. This room, one time, will supply gifts for 300 children. We need to do gift bundles for 3,000 children. So at minimum, this room needs to be filled at minimum 10 times to capacity.
Now this year, 98 businesses will participate as drop-off locations. You can learn more about Angel Tree by visiting the Lethbridge Family Services website. A top impact charity is located right here in Lethbridge. Now that's according to research firm Charity Intelligence, which has recognized the Interfaith Food Bank in our city as one of their top 10 in the food bank's category.
Often people look at Charity Intelligence and categorize them as a charity watchdog. In reality, what they are is a research firm that do the work on behalf of donors to go in and identify the charities that are best for donating to have the largest impact of that donation. One of the things we're particularly proud of here is our work to provide a hand up, not just a handout to the clients that we're serving, and empowering families to move past the food bank lineup.
According to Charity Intelligence, 86% of money donated to the Interfaith Food Bank is used towards their cause, and the balance goes to cover their overhead costs. The City of Lethbridge is one step closer to moving forward with curbside compost collection. The province is dishing out $4.75 million to the city to purchase 4 organics collection trucks and 36,000 bins. Compost collection is set to start in 2023 in Lethbridge. The pilot project will start a little earlier, however, in the spring of next year. Some of the items which can go into the organic screen bin include cooked and raw food, including dairy, fruit, vegetables, and bread, napkins, paper plates, and paper bags, grass clippings, twigs, and weeds, peelings and unwanted leftovers, also tea bags, tea leaves, coffee grinds, and coffee filters. The city says households will be able to choose what size of bin they want with 3 separate options available. The Empress Theatre in Fort Macleod is set to play host to the new Ghostbusters Afterlife movie. The producers filmed scenes in the town in the summer of 2019. A street festival will mark the start of the festivities at 6:30 on Saturday night. Ghostbusters fan clubs from all over the province will be making their way to the town to set up merchandise as well. This event is also a fundraiser for the Empress Theatre for future renovations.
The Empress is 109 years old this year, and she is in great condition and quite a gem on Main Street. But the floors and the seats are eventually going to be need renovation. And so this money is going to help towards that for sure.
A local brewery called Stronghold Brewing will be serving up a Proton Pack-inspired green beer as well tomorrow night. The City of Regina has a space that has been found to temporarily house homeless people who've been living in tents in a park for more than a month. The shelter will be operated by the Regina Treaty Status Indian Services and will provide 40 beds for camp residents and anyone else who needs shelter. The space, paid for by the city and province, will be open for 6 months to get people out of the cold, winter cold, and doors will be opened on Monday. The province of Manitoba is changing its public health orders to try and reverse a rising number of COVID-19 cases. The new rules will focus on youth sports and, in some areas, religious gatherings.
So relates to the religious gatherings in Southern Health Region. So the religious gatherings are limited to 25 persons, unless the facility can physically divide their space into separate areas, in which case you can have several cohorts of 25 individuals. The total number of attendees at a service may not exceed 25% capacity of the facility to a maximum of 250 people. Again, that can only be achieved through the use of cohorts if the overall capacity allows.
Canadian fashion mogul Peter Nygard has had his case put over by another 2 weeks. Nygard, who faces sexual assault charges, made a brief video appearance in Toronto courtroom earlier this morning. His next hearing has been scheduled for November the 26th. Nygard was flown to Toronto from Winnipeg last month to face 6 charges of sexual assault and 3 of forcible confinement dating back to the late 1980s and mid-2000s. Athletes in Action has been bringing people to Christ through sports for a number of decades. Harold Cooper is a Lethbridge pastor and used to work with the organization when he was a chaplain for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Pastor Cooper says it was kind of a rough beginning reaching people for Christ through football.
This is in the early 70s, and sport and Jesus were like way disconnected. The church wasn't even sure what to do about Christian athletes because they were playing on Sunday. Young kids weren't encouraged to be in sport because it conflicted, and there was a whole cultural difference than what we have today. And so they were really pioneers, and they established the chaplaincy program, and then they realized they had a platform of influence, and they started going to schools, and they started doing community events, and one of those was the Grey Cup breakfast that I think got started in maybe 1976.
Pastor Cooper will have more on the impact that Athletes in Action has had on young people today, coming up the second half of our program. For decades, the historic Ariana Cinema in Kabul, Afghanistan has entertained Afghans with Bollywood movies and American action films. Now that the Taliban are in power, that historic cinema has been closed.
بله ما با کار خود میایم وظیفه ما را جواب نداده تا فعلا که شما نبینید.
It almost felt like summer again today as we got up to double-digit temperatures. Enjoy it while you can because things are changing. Full weather details are coming up. We had another mild day in Lethbridge as we got close to 14 degrees once again today. Tonight there's a slight chance of showers developing with a low near 4.
Tomorrow there's a 30% chance of rain developing with a high near 8. The rain should dissipate on Sunday and we should get up to 13 degrees. Overcast and 7 on Monday. Tuesday, good chance of flurries developing with the mercury dropping to -1. Wednesday, the sunshine returns and we should see a high of 3 degrees. Even warmer on Thursday with a high expected near 5. Now the average high for this time of year is 5 degrees and an average low of -7. The record high on this day was 22 degrees set back in 1999. And the record low was a chilly -28 in 1986. The sun rose at 7:39 and will set at 4:53. Let's see how things are shaping up across the country on Saturday. It should be mainly rainy and 10 degrees in Victoria, BC. Showers and 11 are on tap for Vancouver. A mixture of sun mixed with cloud and 7 for Calgary tomorrow. Mainly cloudy and 8 degrees for Edmonton. Expect snow and a high of only 0 in Regina. Periods of light snow mixed with rain and a high of +1 for Saskatoon. Snow and -1 for Winnipeg on Saturday. In the central part of the country, Toronto should receive rain and a high of 7 degrees. A good chance of showers and 5 degrees for Ottawa. Rain and 8 degrees for Montreal on Saturday. In Atlantic Canada, the clouds should clear out and you should see a high of 11 degrees in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Rain and 16 is on tap for Halifax, Nova Scotia. Showers and 14 for Charlottetown, PEI. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect rain with a high near 6 degrees for tomorrow.
A strike notice has been issued by the union representing 1,400 workers at the Cargill meatpacking plant near High River, Alberta. If the changes workers are requesting are not made, staff will hit the picket line on December the 6th. Workers have brought up health and safety concerns related to COVID-19. Last year, the meatpacking plant saw a deadly outbreak with 3 people dying from COVID. Officials said an additional 950 workers and hundreds of family and community members tested positive for COVID-19 during the outbreak. UFCW Local 401 also said workers want improved benefits and raises for those who are awarded new jobs. The Kellogg Company is suing its local union in Omaha, Nebraska, accusing striking workers of blocking entrances to its cereal plant and intimidating workers entering the facility. The company, which is based in Michigan, asked a judge to order the Omaha chapter of the union to stop interfering with business while workers picket outside of the plant. The employees in Omaha, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee have been on strike since October the 5th. 2 days of contract talks earlier this month went nowhere and failed to produce an agreement. Johnson & Johnson is splitting into two companies. It will separate the division that sells medical devices and prescription drugs from the one that sells Band-Aids and Listerine. The company says the division selling drugs and medical equipment will keep the Johnson & Johnson brand. A name was not disclosed for the new consumer health company that will house brands such as Neutrogena, Tylenol, and Band-Aid. The company says the split should take place within the next 2 years. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 186 points on the day to finish at 21,769. The Dow was up 179 points to 36,100. The S&P 500 was up 33 points to 4683, and the Nasdaq was up 156 points on the day to 15,861. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 81 cents to 80.78 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 36 cents to 4.79 US. Gold was up 2.78 to 18.64.90 US an ounce, and silver was up 6 cents to 25.32 US an ounce. Wheat is at $12.11 per bushel, barley's at $9.58, canola's at $23.50, and corn is at $9.96 per bushel. Live cattle were up 25 cents to $132.13. Feeder cattle were down $1.08 to $156.25, and lean hogs were up 50 cents to $75.88. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 79.68 US.
Recapping one of our top stories this hour, a new report says at least 45,000 surgical procedures have been postponed in Alberta throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the province, around 15,000 surgeries have been cancelled so far during the fourth wave alone. Patients are now waiting for up to 4 years from the time they're referred to when they're able to see a surgeon. Many are deciding to get to the U.S. to get surgeries there instead. Athletes in Action is a Christian organization which continues to reach people for Christ through a wide variety of sports. Former Saskatchewan Roughriders chaplain Harold Cooper will have details for us in just a moment.
Professional athletes have a large influence on young people today, far more so than in generations past. Some are good influences, others not so much. We're going to take a look at how Christian athletes influence society and how the universal language of sports can be a tool to reach people's spiritual needs. We're joined by Pastor Harold Cooper from the Central Church of Christ in Lethbridge. Pastor Harold, welcome to the show. So great to see you again.
Hey, it's fantastic to be able to see you. And I need to put a disclaimer up right at the start.
Okay.
Though I've worked with athletes and been in the athletic world for a long time, I am not the athlete. I'm just clear evidence that God has a sense of humor when he put me in that world.
Well, you have a sense of humor too, Harold. So I understand that you were formerly on staff with an organization called Athletes in Action. And so now you still do some volunteer work with them as well, as I understand. So can you, first of all, maybe explain what this organization is?
Sure. In the early 70s, Athletes in Action got started because at that time in the Canadian Football League, there was no chaplaincy program. There was no platform for athletes who were becoming new believers or who already were to really have any connection. And so a group of guys, players and ministry leaders got together, and they had a burden to use the platform of sports to have an influence in Canada, and in particular at that time within the Canadian Football League. So the short story is they established Athletes in Action, set up a chaplaincy ministry with the league. It took a while before every team would be open to it because this is in the early 70s, and sport and Jesus were like way disconnected. The church wasn't even sure what to do about Christian athletes because they were playing on Sunday. Young kids weren't encouraged to be in sport because it conflicted, and there was a whole cultural difference than what we have today. And so they were really pioneers, and they established the chaplaincy program, and then they realized they had a platform of influence, and they started going to schools, and they started doing community events, and one of those was the Grey Cup breakfast that I think got started in maybe 1976 and has continued ever since. And so the Grey Cup coming up in Hamilton, there will be maybe 700 to 1,000 people that will gather. to hear the testimony of athletes and coaches, some of whom are in that game, and they will openly share about what Jesus has meant to them. So it sort of got started in the CFL, has branched now into divisions such as campus ministries, camp ministries for kids, international partnerships, and the establishment of international ministries. So AIA Canada is connected with AIA globally. And so from those small beginnings in the States in the 50s and in Canada in the 70s, there are Athletes in Action ministries of one size or scale or another all around the world.
That's amazing. I had no idea what the scale of that was either. Now, Harold, you spent a number of years as a chaplain to the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So what was that like?
So keeping in mind my disclaimer right at the start,
Yeah.
I'm this short 5'6" guy. This was in 1996 when I went to become the full-time chaplain. I had been there in 1995 for the Grey Cup breakfast. That was the one with the Baltimore Stallions, I think. They won. It was freezing cold. The greatest sign was a guy over in the stands with a big sign that said, "At least there's no mosquitoes," right? So the involvement with me with the team was riddled with lots of fun and actually insecurities as well, because here was this small guy with these massive men, elite athletes in our nation. And I'm going, okay, so how do I fit in? So what was it like? At times it was intimidating. At times it was fearful. It just reminded me of a biblical truth that we are called to be ambassadors for the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so it doesn't matter our size or shape. One of my great lines during that season was, when God measures a person, he wraps the tape around their heart, right? And so athletes are measured in all kinds of capacities. And it was just a privilege, really, to be able to be involved. I got to go to Grey Cup games. I got to be with the players on the field. But more importantly, I had a chance to meet one-to-one and to do the pre-game chapels and to do Bible studies with the athletes for a season of time in Regina. We had a coach's off season. Really, it's just the non-playing season because they're hard at it. So we used to do Bible studies with them. So every morning, once a week, we'd get together and pray together and study scripture and work our way through. So it was a great privilege and really a great honor to be involved. But there are some very odd and strange things as well.
I bet. Well, that's really fascinating. And I do remember, just as a side note, I do remember when they had the U.S. expansion teams with Baltimore. I was actually a cheerleader for the Blue Bombers during that time. So this might have been around the same time frame if it was back in the 90s. So there you go.
It was, that's for sure.
I have to ask, so how did these players who weren't Christians respond to you? Did anyone ever ask you for advice or for prayer?
So in the chaplaincy program, in many ways, you function like a pastor, not only to the players and the coaches, but even the whole organization. And so there were times when, like for weddings, if they were looking for somebody and they didn't have a church, I'd had a chance to do some of the weddings, particularly for some of the players. You did a fair amount of one-to-one mentorship and discipleship, where the common experience for a number of the athletes can be something like this. They grew up playing football, and particularly in the States, they might have been involved with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes because they have a high school chaplaincy program. So, and for many of our American players, and there's a distinction in terms of their spiritual history, for many of them, it was mom, the flag, and church, right? And so they grew up sort of doing that. And so they had a much stronger faith connection than our Christian or our Canadian players, rather.
Yeah, family, faith, and football is kind of their motto.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Sure. And so whether it was intimate and personal in the relationship with Jesus or sort of just a cultural, this is what we do. Because they would be used to pre-game prayer. Okay. They would be used to a chapel. And so oftentimes something would trigger in their life, not unlike almost everyone, something would trigger in their life to prompt them to start to consider about spiritual things. And so then they would often start talking with one of the Christian players who would then go, hey, look, why don't you start coming out to Bible study, or why don't you start coming out to chapel? And so my role was to create a safe place, a confidential place. The chaplains aren't paid by the team at all to keep sort of a neutrality there. So on lots of occasions, I would spend a fair amount of time one-to-one mentoring, discipleship style of work with them. And like I say, weddings, when there's a crisis. I didn't have to deal with a death while I was there, but other chaplains over the years have had to deal with loss of life issues, either with the player or some of the staff, those types of things. But the fun thing for me was actually, as a chaplain, doing the baptism side of things. As players would work through that faith journey, they would make a decision for Jesus and go, so now what? So then we'd have conversations around that. So yeah, it was great.
That's amazing. So your role where there was also, it was volunteer, and you're just giving up so much of your time to do this.
Right. So as a chaplain, I was full-time staff. So I was like a missionary with Campus Crusade for Christ. It's now called Power to Change. So we raised our support, trusted God for those resources. And then as I shifted in my ministry away from full-time with Athletes in Action and went into sports camps, that's a whole other thing. I still retained a connection, because when I was with the Riders, I was asked if I would consider launching Athletes in Action in Zambia. And so I started taking players and athletes and coaches, and we did international projects in Southeast Africa. So I can remember one occasion where we were in Kenya, and we had 3 full-time players at that time. And we were out in this rural area, and it was the, I can't even remember the name, but it was like a Methodist Baptist, the African Methodist Baptist, something. And so we went into this dirt chapel, and one of our guys just wept and wept. He grew up in Georgia, and the church looked very much like what he could remember as a little kid. And he went, it was just like in the movie, he goes like, I found my roots. I found my history. I found my life, and just to create opportunities like that for them to have that experience. So now I continue as a volunteer with Athletes in Action in the international side. So I'm not so much in the major outreaches or things like that, but I still help facilitate international projects and training athletes and coaches and administrators in their country to start just like it did here in Canada.
Yeah. Well, we started this interview talking a little bit about how oftentimes sports people are role models, young people look up to them. So what are some of the pros and cons, in your opinion, of looking up to pro athletes as models for our children?
So it's a fantastic question, because it begs an even bigger picture, but I won't go there. I'll just make the aside. I think every believer is a role model, right? And so some of us do better at that than others, depending upon our life place. So what I've learned over long years of ministry is the story's never over. So we've got these players that we see for a small window of time, and they're in the middle of, for some of them, a very early story. So yes, without any reservation, they are having an influence. Sport is having a phenomenal influence in the world. I think that's evidenced with the number of the issues like the Black Lives Matter, whether players will stand or kneel for the national anthem. And so that platform is huge when you consider, like at an NFL game, there could be close to 90 to 100,000 people in the stands. Like, that's bigger than the entire town of Lethbridge. So, when you think of all of those people and they're watching, and what every one of those players do, especially I think more so because of social media availability to be followed and all those kinds of things, the use of media by the players, it can be incredible, but there's always risks, right? Because there's a Bible verse, I think, that says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." So we find people in the middle of their stories, and when they fall, we tend to sort of be far more harsh on them. I had a phrase that said, remember where you came from so you can offer grace to those who still live there. So you have the incredible positive influence, which is why we go into schools and sports, and athletes and things are, they're sought after because their life experience has given them a platform. And that platform can be either used or abused. And so really it's the character of that athlete. And so I keep encouraging people, look to the athlete, but look to the life behind the athlete that is making him or her to be who they are.
Oh, that's such great advice. And we see so many of these stories coming out with athletes, and some of them aren't the greatest stories. And I would imagine it's a huge challenge when an athlete makes a moral failure. It gets a lot of media attention, and the young kids, they're paying attention. I mean, this just recently happened with the Las Vegas Raider who was driving drunk and killed a young woman. I think that happened just last week. So we're seeing these crazy stories coming out of these athletes.
And I think part of it is, like, there might be a need inherently for people to have somebody to look up to, and that's valuable. That's important. But choosing who that person is might be better differentiated by not necessarily the position or achievement that they've gotten to, but that the character and personality that they demonstrate. Because like Tim Tebow and his family, and like there's others that are doing unbelievably wonderful things with the amazing funds that they have, the platform that they have, and they're really making a difference. But that's grown out of a character that has been cultivated or transformed to have them think beyond themselves. And I think the problem with sport is it has this constant identity issue that, you're the somebody. And they've worked hard to get there, unbelievably hard. But behind all of that is somebody who has coached them, cared for them, encouraged them. Nobody gets to the top by themselves, and nobody becomes an elite athlete without an unbelievable coach who just believed in them until they could believe for themselves. So I think that's the big challenge with the athletes. It's sort of wherever they come from is going to be far more critical, because that will often dictate where they're going to wind up. But we don't always know the backstory.
Oh gosh, and
as you know.
Exactly. And there's just so much to unpack here, but unfortunately we're out of time. We could have gone on and talked about this, and talked about coaches, influences, and great sports camps for kids. So we'll just have to have you back on again. Oh my
goodness, yeah.
Thanks so much, Pastor Harold, for being with us today. We really appreciate you.
See ya. My joy. It's always a joy. See ya.
Well, being a mother can be incredibly a challenging juggling act, and an instruction manual would definitely help. Well, we may have one for you today, as we are joined by Dallas Lewis, a mother of 3 and author of Why Some Animals Eat Their Young, a survivor's guide to motherhood. Dallas, welcome. You're joining us from Houston. Love the title of your book, by the way. It's hilarious.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so good to be here. Yeah.
All right. So you dived right into the motherhood business. So I understand that within a span of only 26 months, you went from getting married to having 3 kids. Boom, 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 just like that. So did you and your husband plan for things to happen this way, or was this unexpected?
No, totally unexpected. We planned to get married. We planned to have children. We thought there would be more space in between all of those events, and it turns out there really wasn't. I met my husband. We got married 6 months later, and then 6 months after that, we got pregnant, and I just stayed pregnant, like all the time
for what felt like forever, probably.
Yes, definitely forever.
What were the biggest adjustments that you had to make to how you envisioned your life would turn out once you married your Prince Charming? And his name is Jeff, right?
His name is Jeff. Yeah. So the biggest adjustment that I made was not being able to sleep. When we had all of these kids, nobody tells you that babies don't sleep. They don't sleep at all. And they sleep more than their mothers, and they definitely sleep more than their fathers do. I think my husband morphs into some super stealth ninja at night because none of the children ever woke him up to fight bad guys, to fix tummy aches, nothing. I don't know what they thought I was going to do against a monster in the hallway, but I don't know. Nope, that's my job title. I fight bad guys, and I kiss boo boos.
So you were super mom.
Yeah, and I didn't sleep for almost a decade. I had a baby monitor next to my bed. I had 3 of them. And so I knew which kid to go to. And, then you'd make the rounds. Once you're upstairs, you just make the rounds and make sure everybody else is okay. And 9 times out of 10, you made more than one stop.
Right. Now, I mean, many moms describe motherhood as being the toughest job in the world. You have as well. So why, in your life, in your opinion, why is motherhood the toughest job in the world? As if we can't tell already from your little bit of a story there.
Well, just did I mention that we don't get any sleep? That I didn't realize. I want to take back all of the times in my kindergarten years and my first grade years when they wanted us to nap, and I said no, I'm good. You can't stockpile sleep, and it's just I was a stay home mom. That was what Jeff and I decided. Especially when we had so many of them, and it just didn't make any sense for me to work outside the home. But with that means that I don't ever leave my office. I'm on duty 24/7 with no interaction with people that can actually put coherent words together. And so it gets very tiresome. My sweet husband, he could actually leave his work and come home. I never left my work. I never left. So that just it makes it kind of wearisome at times. It's wonderful. I wouldn't change a thing. But it does make it a little bit exhausting at times.
I think definitely that's one thing you do hear about moms, especially stay-at-home moms, is that becomes their world, right? And you almost forget how to talk to other adults. But, and you need those boundaries. So you believe that kids not only need boundaries, but they also want them. Speaking of boundaries, so kids need them. So without those boundaries, the kids are in control and not the parent. So why do you believe that our society is so confused about this role of parenthood?
You nailed it, because the kids are in control, and it totally goes against the natural law, the natural order, the hierarchy of the family. And there's so many instances that you see all over TV, you see them on the news, you see them all over social media, that little Junior runs the house, and little Junior doesn't pay the mortgage, and he doesn't pay the light bill, and we told our kids, we allow you to live here. That's your allowance. You are allowed to live here, and you are allowed to take out the trash when I tell you, and maybe I'll feed you dinner. And, it's the parent's job to be a parent. I wasn't friends with my mom until I turned 40. And, it's just not my job to be their friend. They have friends, but what they need are parents, grown-ups, and other adults around them to show them where their place in society is and how to behave like a functioning member of that society.
Mm-hmm. Very good point. Now, you advocate that one of the greatest examples parents can give their children is to put each other first and model a healthy marriage. So why do you believe that this is and why this isn't selfish?
Because of what I just said, it's our job to raise productive members of society and then release them into the wild. And if we've done our job as parents, we can do that, and then our children will go and be another generation of hands-on good parents. But in doing that, if we forget our spouse and we forget who we're married to, then by the time that last little chick leaves the nest, we're going to be having coffee with a stranger. And that is detrimental to any relationship. And, my husband has continued to date me for the last 22 years. And, and human babies Girl, human babies are the most helpless babies on the planet until they're maybe 35. And then, they need guidance, they need a hands-on parent. But at the same time, that parent still needs to be able to connect. Mom and dad need to be more than just mom and dad. They need to remember that they're husband and wife. And that's the best gift that we can give our kids. So, because we want that trend to continue into the next generation and the next generation. And I think it's really, really important.
It is. And I can understand too, some people, maybe their initial reaction would be, oh, that's selfish that we're putting ourselves first, or I'm putting somebody before my children. But when you think about it, the spouse was there first in some cases and in a lot of cases. And that is how it's supposed to be. But yeah, I can see that kind of the guilt when you don't put your kids first. But I think we're not supposed to put our kids necessarily first in everything.
Mm-mm. No, we're not. I mean, and don't get me wrong. I would do anything. I would fight a grizzly bear for my children. But I would also do the same thing for my spouse who's been there for me for the last 22 years, who loves me unconditionally. He's seen me at my worst. He's been my partner, my stabilizer, all of this through all the chaos, and he's been there. So I think that it's not selfish. It's self-preservation to be able to go for a weekend downtown and leave the kids at grandma's.
There you go. Now, Dallas, you use the acronym UFO a bit differently. So you call this Unique Family Opportunities. So how do you navigate these situations, and what do you try to teach your children through these?
To be honest, I'm still learning that, as I have a lot of unique family opportunities on both sides of the family, both sides, my side, his side, everybody. And the best advice I can give is, you don't exactly know where everybody is in their personal daily life. And sometimes, it's difficult to look at a happy functioning family and you don't have that yourself. And so sometimes it gets a little wonky. And but the best thing to do is realize that his family gave him to me, and so there's a level of respect with that. And then my family, well, they gifted me to him, and my mother already said there's no refunds, so he stuck with me, which means he's stuck with my parents too. So, you do the best you can. You show grace to everybody, mercy, and just try to treat people the way that you would like to be treated. Doesn't always work, but that as far as it depends on you, you're at peace.
Yeah, I like that. Unique family opportunities. Is that a nice way of saying craziness? Family craziness.
So crazy. So crazy.
That's hilarious. Now, Dallas, with the COVID pandemic and all the changes that this brings about, so what advice do you have for children who are experiencing worry and anxiety? So many of our kids are experiencing that. Absolutely.
So my youngest actually does suffer from an anxiety disorder, and so that's something that is very, that hit very close to us. We were thankful, we were blessed to have our children in a parochial school environment, private school, that allowed them to work for a solution toward these kiddos they've been on lockdown, they've been relegated to virtual school only, and now if they go back to school, they've got a mask up, and facial expressions are vital. They are vital to comforting a child, to getting your point across, to all of these social cues. And so as parents, when we've got our kiddos that are re-navigating the social scheme, it's just up to us to let them know that their home place is a secure spot for them, and that there's a lot of things that are going to go on in this world that are outside of our capabilities and outside of our control. And the only thing that we can do is give them a safe landing spot in the afternoons and equip them as best we can to do their very best.
I think that's very important, because it's happening. So many kids suffer from anxiety. And yeah, absolutely. Now, you say that marriage is hard and marriage with kids is almost impossible. So if you aren't willing to stand your ground and fight for what you have. So can you maybe elaborate on this a little bit?
Sure. It's the same with being my kid's best friend and putting boundaries up. Marriage, you've got two people coming into it that may or may not have known each other very well. And then you throw a kid in there, and honestly, babies don't come with instruction manuals. The hospital will
They should.
release you with that child. They
Scary.
don't call and check on you. 3 times they didn't call and check on me, and they probably should have with my first one. But you've got to set those boundaries so that those kiddos don't run your house. Don't run your house, and that's what makes it so difficult. Is sometimes mom and dad are not always on the same page, and they really need to be. And that's what makes it so hard. You can navigate the first year of marriage by yourself. But when you start throwing little ones in there and you've got one idea and he's got a different idea, and then don't forget your mother's got an idea and his mom has got an idea. You need to set some ground rules and pay attention to what's going on, or your marriage is going to suffer for it.
That's right, exactly. And then here come the crazies, right? Those unique family opportunities.
That's right.
Yeah, well, Dallas, you use lots of humor, obviously, in telling your stories and lessons that you've learned along the way. But at the same time, none of what you were experiencing was exactly funny, especially at the time. I'm sure that's how that felt. But what is your message to parents or those planning to become parents?
Let's see. My first message is practice with a puppy. Get a puppy first, and see if you can handle the responsibilities. No, but my message is you got to be able to laugh. You've got to be able to laugh at yourself, and because your kids are going to provide multiple opportunities for other people to laugh at you, and so you just need to find the joy in things. This parenting thing is very, very hard, but it's awesome. I mean, it's totally awesome. You get to watch a human come into this world, whether through you or through another avenue, and you get to raise. You have the benefit, the blessing of raising that human, watching their little minds click into place. Now, sometimes it's diabolical. You watch the next budding criminal in your own house, but they're so precious. They're so precious. And I'm thankful that I actually wrote all of these stories down when I did, that I kept a little journal, or I kept, I don't remember exactly when I started my blog, but it helps. Distance helps perspective. So if you can get just a little distance from it and have people to talk to, increase your mom circle, because we weren't created to be islands. We were created to be in community with each other, and nobody is perfect. You don't disregard what you see on Instagram and Facebook. Nobody's perfect. So just learn to just roll with it. You can't control the chaos. Just roll with it.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. And of course, coming from a mom of your kids are now 18, 19, and 20. So you've had that span of experience that you can kind of share your wisdom with others. Thanks so much for being with us today, Dallas. Really appreciate it.
So fun. Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed it.
Dallas Lewis is the author of Why Some Animals Eat Their Young, a Survivor's Guide to Motherhood. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.